Hey guys, I am so glad you're back this week. It's your pal Jordan, and July brings a new month, and it's one of my favorite months of the year because it's our anniversary month. So, which leads me to introducing my most favorite person in the world, my husband.
Hey guys, how are y'all doing? Hi. It's your boy. I'm in the building.
It's your pal Leighton.
It's your pal Leighton.
So this is my husband Leighton. Our anniversary is at the end of this month, and it has been a wild ride.
Yeah, to say the least, for sure.
It's been a fun ride, but it's been wild. So I wanted to spend this month chatting our journey and also going through some frequently asked questions through our first year of marriage. I guess our expectations versus reality. But today we're going to talk about pretty much how we survived a long distance relationship, because that's what we started our relationship on, and just kind of chatting about, you know, what our journey looked like, the highs, the lows, and what kind of brought us to this sitting moment right here.
Right on.
Yeah, so you ready to do this?
Yeah, for sure.
Let's go. I guess I'll start off chatting about how we even met for the first part.
Right, from the beginning.
It was back 2014, that summer. I had just graduated college and you had just moved to Dallas, right?
Well, I was actually living in Austin, working as a mattress salesman. In the job hunt, actively trying to pursue something new. I just wasn't feeling fulfilled with slanging beds all the time.
And then I had just graduated between jobs. I wanted to get out of Ohio, so this job offered me a relocation experience. So they moved me out to Minneapolis, and I was like, you know, if I could sell elevators, I could hopefully sell anything. So I took a risk on it, truly. So I took a risk on that job and moved out to Minneapolis, and our first week of training, we were in the same sales program. So our first week of training, we ended up in Dallas.
Yes, orientation week.
Yeah, so we were in the same orientation class, and I remember meeting Leighton. I just remember thinking, like, the first thing I heard was like the thick Texas accent, and I was like, oh my gosh, I am all about this. Like,
I don't think it's that. It's a thick Texas accent. I can point you in the direction of some dudes with the thick Texas accent.
but listen, as someone that grew up in like the Midwest, we don't, hearing it at first, it was thick. Now it's like not a big, it is still a big deal, but not as much of a big deal. But
right, it just caught you off guard.
Yes,
you weren't ready for it.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
I wasn't
ready. I wasn't ready for all the heat you were bringing my way.
Oh. I wasn't ready for Jordyn. When she opened her mouth, I was like, this girl was definitely a cheerleader at some point. She's got the spunk and the attitude and just like the energy. I was honestly like, whoa, who is this person? Because I've never met anybody so, like, I guess alive or like lively.
I can't tell if that's a good or bad thing, or if I feel like it scares people off sometimes.
It was almost, it didn't scare me, but I was just like,
I'm a lot.
Keep us on our toes.
Yeah, it's okay. I know I'm a lot. I'm accepting of it. But hey, you liked it apparently, right?
There was something about you.
So that first week of training, afterwards we would all like go out to dinner, go grab drinks, and this guy like couldn't get enough of me and wanted to hang out with me until 2 a.m. It was like us and another coworker though, but man, the three of us, like whenever we were traveling for training in that week, we were like,
it's like party time.
Yeah, it was, the three of us were bonded by our love for beers, so. But after that first week, like, I figured I would never see Leighton again. I was just like, all right, cool, like the hot guy from Texas is like really cool and down to earth, but I'm never gonna see him again. So just don't even think about it. But then we found out that we would be traveling more as a group together throughout the year, and that we'd be seeing each other more frequently. So then we realized, like, all right, now I'm gonna be seeing the hot guy from Texas more often. It was super sweet. After like that first week of training, like he offered to like drive me to the airport, and he brought me coffee to my office, like just totally went winning me over, and we just stayed connected throughout the entire time of training. Or I would come down to Dallas, since that's where the office was and we had to go down there frequently. I'd come down early and we'd hang out, and I think we just had that like initial like connection that we couldn't shake after that first week. And that lasted for about 6 months until the end of our training. We had to be relocated again. I was told I was moving to Houston, and Leighton found out that he was moving to Little Rock. And so, you know, I think we both looked up in Google Maps to see like how far the drive from Houston to Little Rock was, and it was a 7-hour drive. I think we both just were kind of like, all right, like we're gonna go for it. Like we're gonna try this distance thing and see if it works. I think we both were just like on board.
I just wanted to like get to know you more, even more after the 6 months, because you're just so unique and special and just like unlike anybody else. Just like nobody I've ever met before, for sure. And I was just very drawn to that. It's like, so there was like a genuineness there that like I had never really experienced with anybody else.
We moved to our new cities, it was like December of that, like 2014, and so like beginning of 2015, that's like when we took off with doing the driving. We would alternate every other weekend, so we'd be a weekend off, I would drive the following weekend, a weekend off, and then Leighton would drive. And we did that for about 8 months up front, something like that. It was about 8 months until like, I think that's when we started realizing that like we weren't seeing eye to eye on like the distance piece of things and like where we were going and what we both kind of had wanted. At that point, we ended up just parting ways. Well, kind of cut it off with me, and I was like, we can still make it work.
We were just like going, I felt like in that moment, just going in completely different directions. I almost felt like I was getting like rooted into where I was and like looking to
stay in Little Rock.
Yeah, and I had pitched it to you a couple times and wasn't really about that life, so.
Yeah, I just thought like your family and friends are in Texas, like that would be the logical move.
I was about to like just fall into the complacency of, okay, I've got a solid job now. This is something that I can grow in.
It's like it works for that moment. It was working. Like, why fix?
And it was getting better. Like, well, I say that I didn't really enjoy what I was doing, but I mean, I was seeing decent success in it.
Right. I was struggling with my job, just really fitting in. I feel like I put a lot of my eggs in the basket of what was just our relationship and was kind of like taking out some of my frustration on you and also like solely relying on our relationship. So I feel like us breaking up was, some might call it odd, but I felt like it was exactly what we needed at that point in time. Like God knew that. It was just like, all right, I need to work on y'all separately. For me, we were broken up for about 6 months, and for me, that was like, it allowed me to like reestablish my like relationship with Christ and my walk with Christ, and you know, I found roots in my home church, and for me, that was just exactly what we needed. And I know when we first broke up, Leighton had asked like if we could still like remain friends and talk, and I remember just saying like, no, like if we're gonna break up, it's gonna be a clean cut, like no in between. And ladies, that's like the best thing you can do for yourself. It was truly like, I just needed to establish a boundary that like, you know, I'm gonna stand on my own 2 feet, and you know, you either want 100% of me, you don't get like the cake and eat it too, so.
Oh, for sure, it was fair. That is fair. I was just about to say, you can have your cake and eat it too.
Right. We would randomly like send like a text to each other, like asking like stupid questions throughout that 6 months, and I'd just be like, I know he's still thinking about me, but I'm not gonna like, I won't let it get to me, even though it did get to me.
And likewise.
Yeah.
Did you get your commission check?
I'd ask him stupid stuff like that, and he'd be like, you could ask anyone else. But anywho, he had reached out. I forget what had brought up the conversation, but we were talking. It was right before I was going back home to Columbus for Christmas time, and we were just talking, and he was gonna be back like close in town for the holidays with his family. I was getting ready to leave, so we were like, well, we'll meet up when I get back, or like we can stop and talk and whatnot when I get back. I got back, and it was like as if things really hadn't changed. Like we kind of just hit it off immediately.
It's just a happy time. It's like the holidays, and like New Year's was like the next day, or like the next couple of days.
So we ended up spending New Year's together, and then at that point, Leighton realized that, you know, he was still madly in love with me. Obviously, like, I was still madly in love with him. We decided that, you know, we're gonna go ahead and give this another go and try to see where things we're gonna go from there. But we decided this time that we do things differently and have God as the foundation. We also, like, were very prayerful each time we would travel to see each other that, you know, next 6 months that we did decide to do distance. You know, the way that God had really worked in, I feel like, our lives too, was we, you know, set a date that we were going to be living in the same city, and we were expectant and prayerful, and we're like, this is going to happen.
Well, we finally, like, talked through some stuff, I feel like, too, and, like, not that we hadn't talked through things previously, but like you were saying, setting some goals and just like I needed from you and you needed from me type deal. Also.
Right. Like hindsight is just like 20/20, so you can kind of see like, oh, I wish I would have done X, Y, and Z better. You get perspective from yourself or someone else during that time apart. And I feel like that was a really great way for us to like initiate a conversation between each other on what, you know, what we are holding ourselves accountable for and what we would like to do differently, and communicating through some of our previous issues. But yeah, I feel like that was like the difference between when we first started distance in comparison to the end part of our distance was like we had a vision in mind of what we wanted and communicated that and held each other accountable to that, and a date in mind and similar goals in mind, whereas the first part we were both just still like figuring ourselves out, figuring our situations out, not really on the same page, no like true vision or goal between us.
And we were both like kind of, if we did have a vision or goal, it was like kind of
they were different, like they weren't on the same page.
Yeah, right. Like I feel like you can have your own vision and goal, but as an individual, but then like as a unit, we can be working towards like, hey, this is the type of impact we want to have on people. Or
I think that's like the biggest part too of, I feel like what I love about our marriage and like our relationship throughout the years is that, you know, I feel like I've always grown up to be a person that like I wanted to be independent and stand on my own, and I didn't really want to just be caught up in like a relationship. I still wanted my like own goals and aspirations, and I think that's like what we had to talk about too, was like what we want individually and what we want as a couple and how those things work and how we can uplift each other to reach both goals. Because I think that's also the key piece of what I was missing too the first time we were dating, was like I was just getting so lost in our relationship, and instead of seeing like, you know, we're individual people, we still like live our own lives and, you know, have to wake up in our own shoes and do our own thing. So I think that was probably like another one of the biggest like mindset perspective shifts that helped us get through it.
I mean, I feel like after we got back together, we were like way more intentional with things.
I totally agree with that too, and I think that's like, especially if you're doing a long distance relationship, like you have to be, with everything that you do, especially like communication and like setting time aside for each other, it's being deliberate with every single thing that you do, because you don't just, you know, now I appreciate the convenience of seeing you all the time, but you can take that for granted when you're only seeing someone for like, what, less than 72 hours. Yeah. Every 2 weeks. So you really got to know how to use your time wisely, both together and apart. I remember Leighton calls me. I was driving back from a work meeting, and Leighton calls me and he goes, Jordyn, I have something to tell you. I'm like, oh my gosh, what could this be?
He's pregnant.
Yeah. I was like, oh my gosh, like what's going on? He tells me, he's like, you know, I really believe that I can do this. It's a job opportunity with a company. I'd be working with teams, and interviewed for this job without telling me, and I was just like, why wouldn't you tell me about it? But it was because it was like such a big leap of faith.
I didn't want to jinx it too, because I had a few other interviews with like companies that I was really interested in, and it was like, oh yeah, sweet, like these guys are calling me like in medical device and things like that. I was like pumped up about it, and I would tell people, or I might have told you, or I know I told some of the people I worked with that while I was out there that knew I wasn't really happy, and nothing came of it. So that's why I was trying to.
Okay, that's why I was like, why wouldn't you tell me? That makes sense though, but.
Even though I took my first phone call for that job that got me here in the truck of one of my big managers who like knew I was just so over it. Yeah,
it was time to come to you.
And he was cool with it. Like we always hung out and kicked it, and we were the same dude, I felt like, and he knew what was up, so yeah, he kept quiet about it.
But that's like the other big thing too, is like if you have goals and dreams in mind, I'm a firm like believer of like speaking it into existence. You know, this guy was super diligent about getting down here. Was it May 31st or like June 1st you packed everything up?
I believe it was June 1st that
You
I
packed
started
everything
my lease. I thought that's like when I started the lease.
The lease
here.
in Houston.
It was just pouring rain. I just remember that. It was brutal because I was pulling a U-Haul with my Jeep, but...
Yeah, it's so crazy that like, then he moved down here. We lived separately. I mean, once he moved down here, I felt like the rest was kind of like set in stone. So you proposed August 5th, 2017. We got married July 28th. Sorry. I know our wedding date, July 28th, 2018. Closed on our house the same month that we got married.
Don't recommend anybody ever doing that.
Do not. If you want to stay sane, don't do that. Oh, and one of my best friends got married that month too in the Dominican. So it was just like one thing after the other. So
absolutely.
Don't recommend that. It's been a fun but kind of crazy ride, but I absolutely love our story, and it's been, I think, perfectly crafted for you and I. And you know, after we came back from our like pretty dope honeymoon, we got right into the swing of things and
took off like
immediately.
Boom, yes.
Which we'll have to record a few other videos about them, but we ended up inheriting like a really difficult like plumbing issue for our house, and it was just one thing after another, and probably say our marriage got started off on a pretty difficult note, dealing with all of that kind of stuff. But
just a bunch of headaches, a bunch of stuff going on, all like real life, I guess, hitting you, just like...
Yeah, but we'll get into all of that next video, because we'll go through like what kind of like our expectations were. But you know, I guess just to like round up kind of what we thought about long distance, kind of how we got through, in case anyone is looking for like a tidbit of advice. I think from my end, as like, I guess my perspective was, you have to make sure that you stand on your own as an individual. Like, your relationship is important, but like making sure that you as a person are sound and healthy, whether it's your social relationships or your mental health or life within work. You have to make sure that you're healthy and okay as yourself, because then you'll project those problems onto that person, and they're not going to be able to fix that for you. I think that's one of my big pieces. And the other thing too is probably like, I mean, obviously communication. We communicate so differently, so like working through, for the most part, I'm an open book, and it's like kind of the exact opposite, so we've had to like work through.
Yeah, for sure, that's what I was struggling with, and still to this day somewhat struggle with it, for sure. Opening up, I'm sure a lot of guys can testify to that, like keeping it held within. That's usually not very good, because you're just becoming like a ticking time bomb at that point. But being deliberate and reaching out to you and being there for you, and like trying to put you first, not be so selfish, looking to like fulfill my needs, you know? I
mean, I think that's just, and I think that's like the other difficult piece too that we've kind of had to learn through like marriage. And you know, we did premarital counseling, and I guess...
That was great. I would strongly recommend that.
I highly recommend. But naturally as people, like, we have been like wired to do like, go after our needs first, which they're still very much so important, but like being in a relationship and being in a marriage is like self-sacrifice, in the sense of you're there to serve that other person, and you have someone else's needs to think about, but you also have to still make sure like your needs and mental, physical, emotional, spiritual are fulfilled, because then you're starting to cross some like gray hairs in that space too. So when your cup is full, you can pour into someone else.
There you go. There you go.
We just try to make sure we have as much fun with each other as possible too.
Try not to take things too serious. Try not to take yourself too seriously too, for sure. My thing is just the communication though, and being deliberate and intentional with it. I think we'll also, like, the next video, get into more of like the service side of things, and
marriage,
like
our expectations, what we had to work through, yeah, all of that stuff. We'll get all into that juicy stuff next. Okay guys, thank you so much for sticking around, listening to our story. I mean, you know, I got myself a good one, but it's definitely taken some work, and The work has been hard, but it's been worth it, and every step has been worth it. It's been crazy and wild and fun, but
And it's not done.
yeah, it's not done. We're still
It's
growing
a continuous
and
work, like everything.
yeah, and there's days where like things are super, super high, and there's days where, you know, I think we're just at each other, but that's just life, and you learn to work through all of it. But we'll get into that next. Until next time, click below to subscribe, like, comment, and I will also put all of my social links in case you're wondering what life looks like outside of YouTube on my Insta. This guy makes an appearance pretty frequently. So until then, we'll see you guys our next video.
Adios.
Peace.